Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Kingsmen Sports Podcast, episode number 25, and our first episode in a while. It has been a hectic month plus in both of our lives, so we kind of step back for just a little bit. I'm not going to necessarily say we're going to stop trying to do weekly episodes, but there might be a few more weeks here and there where we take time off just due to trying to catch up on actual work and actual personal lives going on. But we are still going to try to do as many episodes as possible. We are back here with episode 25. It is going to be a football heavy episode. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode, though, as well. We'd like to cut down on the time a little bit just to make it more enjoyable for you guys, a little bit more, well, I guess, easier for you guys to listen to, more convenient. Right. So we're going to try our best to do that. So let's go ahead and start in the realm of the NFL. And we are entering week 13 of the season, which means we're starting to take a look at playoff pictures, see who's in, see who's not. So we're going to start by talking about the playoffs a little bit. And that begins with division winners. We went through and we tried to look at current division leaders as of this very moment that we don't think will be the team to win that division, or teams that are in danger, I guess, of losing that spot and falling out of the division. So we kind of went about it different ways. I'll start with one of my only two that I had, and that's the Miami Dolphins. I think they end up dropping down to a wild card. I think Buffalo ends up overtaking them, especially Miami's got a pretty tough schedule. Starts this week at San Francisco, then at LA, then at Buffalo. So 3 straight road games, come home to host Green Bay before going to New England and then hosting the Jets to end their season. That's a lot of road games left, while Buffalo has fairly split 3-3. A little bit easier of a home schedule with the Jets, Dolphins, and a Patriots, and then they go on the road to the Patriots, Bears, and Bengals. So I just don't see the Dolphins really hanging on to that spot. The only reason they have it right now is because they won that head-to-head matchup with Buffalo. They actually are even in the record column. I just think Buffalo's a better team. I think they end up overtaking Miami there. You did not have them on because you kind of, again, like I said, went about it a different way. So you just want to explain how you kind of looked at things?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of question marks. I mean, win-loss column only, there's 2 teams tied right now. And I know, they have their tiebreakers. So Bills, Dolphins, and Ravens, Bengals. I ended up not including them simply because all 4 of those teams are not really in real danger. They're going to be just fine. All 4 of them are looking to be playoff teams. They're doing okay. Yeah, they could lose that top dog spot, but not a lot of danger there. I feel like all 4 of those are sitting just fine.
Yeah, so let's get into the other one where we really both circled in. Let's dive into this. It's the NFC South, and it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I have it 1.5 games separates first from last place in this division. Every single team in this division still has a good shot with just that small margin. For Tampa Bay, I don't trust them getting the job done. I not only do I not think that they're in, or do I think that they're in danger of losing that spot, I think they actually will lose that spot. That offense still just looks really, really bad. That offensive line, which was supposed to be a strength, is not a strength by any means. The defense looks average at best. They're not, losing them games. They're keeping them in games. Year. But yeah, it's not the same defense that won them that Super Bowl. And Tom Brady just doesn't look like Tom Brady. The run game's been pretty bad all season long. Leonard Fournette struggling. They're just kind of abandoning the run and making Tom Brady go out there and try and be Tom Brady, which at his age, I know he's still very talented, but you want him to be more of a guy who exploits your defense when they're trying to adjust to other pieces around him. You don't want him to be the centerpiece, if that makes sense. You want him to kind of be a side on your plate rather than the main course, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And right now, I think every other team in that division, except for Atlanta, is trending in the opposite direction. I think the Saints end up being that team to win that division. I would look past Carolina. That defense is playing really well. It looks like they figured something out on offense with Foreman really running the football, a run-heavy squad. I just think New Orleans is the best all-around team. That defense is better than any other defense in that division. And the offense, they're pretty stacked with a lot of talent. I know you really like the weapons that the Saints have, so I'll let you dive in a little bit more on that. But I think the Saints are going to be the team to beat. I think they end up beating Tampa Bay this Monday night and take that division.
You know, at the beginning of the year when I said Saints take that division and the Bucks were gonna tank this year, you said that was my craziest take.
But hold on, about 6-7 weeks in, were you feeling really confident that the Saints are going to win that division still?
I was not, but and I still don't know if I am, to be honest with you. That entire division has just had one rough outing after another. There isn't a single team over 500. It's anybody's game. Bucks could hold it, sure. But Falcons have shown some really good flashes of solid play, and the Saints are just loaded with raw talent. They could easily pick up a few wins and take it. So, I mean, we'll see if a losing record gets into the playoffs here. But yeah, that division is truly anyone's game. And yeah, if we're being honest, I don't see the Bucks holding on to it the way that they've been playing. Leonard Fournette has been feast or famine all year. Tom Brady has been more famine than feast. With injuries, with the defense not being quite as lights out as they have been in past years, with that offensive line not doing what they need to do. I mean, you've seen Brady on the sidelines just screaming at people. They are not having a good time right now, and it's a long season. It's the longest they've seen, and if you are not winning games and not playing well together, it is even longer. It feels like 30 games rather than 17. So I could see, honestly, my favorite right now is the Falcons, to be honest with you. Just the way that guys have stepped up when they need it to be, and it seems to be a different person every week. But like, we were mentioning Kyle Pitts being out. That's going to hurt them. We'll see who steps up in his place. He was kind of a non-factor all year. I don't know if they're going to miss him or not. And then Saints, again, honestly, talent-wise, I think the most stacked roster in that division. They just are not putting it together. You got Jamies, you got Taysom, you've got who is going to bring that team together. It's all just up in the air. And then I would really like to include the Titans in divisional leaders in danger as well. But the Colts have just been playing some really, really poor football lately. Said it all year long. Matt Ryan has looked horrible. Last game was no help to his arguments there. Could not lead a single receiver. Even when they caught the ball, they should have been getting 3-4 more yards after the catch, and he's just putting it behind him. The clock managing was atrocious. It was really sickening to watch, especially since I needed it for both of my fantasy teams and the pick'ems to go my way at like 0 for 4. So I don't see them putting it together to overtake the Titans, even though I do suppose it's a higher probability than some of the other divisional switch-ups that could happen. But outside looking in, I don't think that it gets done.
Yeah, I feel confident saying it's not going to get done. I'd like to say that the Vikings are in danger, but obviously they're really, at least not from the Packers, maybe the Lions, but yeah, it's
even the Lions, they would have to pretty much win out, and the Vikings lose out. So
yeah, yikes. Let's move into the wild card winners. This means that we both agree the Titans are going to go ahead and wrap up that division. The Chiefs are in a pretty good spot. We also have the Vikings in a good spot, as well as Philly and San Francisco also feeling in a good spot for their division. So let's get into the wild card teams. We're going to start with the AFC because I have a hot take in the NFC. The top wild card in the AFC, I've got the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that they are in a good spot. They own the tiebreaker over Miami, which, spoiler, is going to be my second. I think it comes down to that. They've won 3 straight right now, Cincinnati. They're getting better as the season goes on, just like they did last season, they caught fire at the end of the season, went all the way to the Super Bowl. They're getting Jamar Chase back as well, which is a very positive thing. The schedule isn't exactly easy. They've got 4 home games, but those home games are against Kansas City, Cleveland, Buffalo, and Baltimore, and a couple of road games at Tampa Bay and at New England. I think they'll take care of business. I think they lose this week to Kansas City. I think that they might be in a spot to beat Buffalo with how Buffalo's been playing lately. But I see worst case scenario, they go 4-2 from here on out. Miami, again, is my second wild card. I kind of already talked about them when it came to the division. That schedule's brutal. That schedule really is, especially 3 straight road games against the Niners, Chargers, and Bills. It's going to get a little bit tough. I think they drop a couple of those games, but I think, again, they're in the same spot. They go 4-2 from here on out. And then my last wild card team in the AFC, I'm going the LA Chargers. I think they're getting a little bit healthier. There's still some pieces that could still come back this season and make them even better. They go to Vegas, then they host Miami and Tennessee, which are a couple of tough games. Then they'll go to Indy, host the Rams, and then go to Denver. So I think they could be on a 3-game win streak by the time the season comes to an end, maybe even a 4 if they can beat Tennessee. I think the Chargers are in a good spot, and they're only going to get stronger, and that schedule's not super tough. I do want to point out, don't sleep on Cleveland. They have a really easy schedule with Deshaun Watson coming back. I think the hole's just too big for them to dig themselves out of right now. So those are my 3, the Dolphins, Bengals, and Chargers.
And, I actually have that backwards from you. The first 2, I think that the Dolphins are going to finish a little bit stronger than the Bengals. But I do see Dolphins and Bengals getting those first 2 wild card spots. My third is actually going to be the Jets. So out of all of the other AFC teams, they have enough life to make that push. Pats have looked decent-ish. Browns have looked okay at times. I do like the Chargers, but not enough to warrant a postseason berth this year. I think that the Jets have just been too solid. And even with trying 3 different quarterbacks, the rest of the team that they've put together is solid.
Yeah, and I will say I thought about the Jets, and then I looked at that schedule to go along with the injuries that they're dealing with. I mean, they've got Minnesota on the road, Buffalo on the road. They play Detroit at home, Jacksonville at home, which I feel confident that'll be a win. But then at Seattle and at Miami, they've got a gauntlet down the stretch. I just feel a little bit safer.
Had a gauntlet
with the
all
Chargers.
year, to be honest with you. I've been impressed with some of the wins that they've been able to etch out. I just feel like skill-wise, they're there in playoff football.
I wholeheartedly disagree. I think they've had some tough losses. I mean, they lost to the Patriots twice. They beat the Browns. They beat the Steelers. They beat the Dolphins, which is a very strong win, albeit without Tua. They beat the Packers. They beat the Broncos. And I mean, they beat the Bills again. I have some issues with the Bills right now. I'm very concerned about them, but just some of their games, I haven't seen
Not
enough from them against these good teams.
Them as the division winner, but
no, again, that schedule is weak down the stretch. They get to play Chicago. Any team that gets to play Chicago down the stretch, I feel confident in.
Feel confident in the Packers. They're playing Chicago this week.
I feel very confident the Packers will be watching the playoffs from home. So confidence, I'm confident. Let's head over to the NFC real quick. I felt very confident. Speaking of confidence, I felt confident with number 1. It's going to be Dallas. Dallas is going to be that top wild card. I don't see any reason why not. They've got a 2-game cushion already with a pretty soft schedule with Indy and Houston both coming to town. Then they'll go to Jacksonville, host Philly before ending their season at Tennessee and at Washington. There's just nothing there that concerns me to where I think Dallas can lose that 2-game cushion. The second wild card, I actually got the Washington Commanders. I think that they are red hot right now, playing really good football. I think they lose this week to the Giants, but they make up that game right out of their bye week by playing the Giants again and winning that one. Then they play San Francisco, which I think is a loss, but then they play Cleveland and Dallas. I think they win both those games because I think Dallas is going to rest some guys for that regular season finale. That defense is only going to get better and better, and they've at least figured something out on offense. I think they're Gonna be a tough
They
team that
figured
you
out to
don't
get
necessarily.
rid of Carson Wentz. That's a good thing to do on offense. So
I don't think it's a team that anyone's gonna want to see in the postseason. And now let's go with the scorching hot take. I don't have the Giants making the playoffs. I don't have the Seahawks making the playoffs. I don't even have the Cardinals making the playoffs.
that was my guess. That was my guess when you started this. I'm like,
no,
he's
you weren't
going to
be
with
able
the
to guess
Cardinals.
this. I think this team is going to win out. They play Jacksonville and Minnesota. Then they play the Jets and Panthers, Bears and Packers. The Detroit Lions are going to get a wild card spot. This team is playing so well right now. Just lost an absolute nail biter to Buffalo. The offense, everything's clicking right now. They're going to come out and they're going to score points on you. And the defense is starting to force some turnovers. If their defense can force some takeaways, they can be right in there with anyone. Come down the stretch. The only game on their schedule that concerns me really is Minnesota, who they blew the game against in Minnesota. Now they get to play them at home. I think the Lions are red hot. I think they went out and they steal that last wild card spot and really just stun everybody.
That is red hot, Matt. We'll see. I don't know.
Blue hot, Lion blue hot.
Okay. I mean, I'm in agreement with you where the NFC gets trickier. There is a chance we see all three wild cards come from the same division. Cowboys are my favorite shoe-in, absolutely. Giants and Commanders could really implode at any time, though. We've seen it. Thought that it was going to happen earlier this year, we'll be honest, when we did our buys and sells.
And I think we're in agreement that one of them is going to implode. There's too many games against one another. One of them has to implode.
Right. I'm going to say that the Giants are the ones that are not going to implode. Just looking at schedule alone, Commanders have it rough. And I don't have faith in that offense still. I know that they have weeks where they're looking to figure it out, but it's just not clicking there. Whereas Giants, at least they have their game plan. They know what they're going to try to do, and they're going to say, stop us if you can. And if not, we're going to take that dub. Thank you. My dark horse, I am actually going with the Seahawks. I am. They had some really close losses lately. Really good football being played on the offensive side of that ball. I don't know if it's just it's really hard to defend against two receivers who are so different from each other, yet so skilled as DK and Tyler. And so I am seeing that offense just move the ball, and you could say Geno Smith has been waiting for this, or you can say he's getting lucky and riding with the rest of the team's success there. But I'm seeing them play some very good ball, and their defense has been shaping up. I mean, they came a long way from letting 50 points being scored against them at the beginning of the year. And so I see them going over 500 the rest of the way. And to be honest with you, with the other teams we're seeing, I think that's going to be enough for them.
See, the thing that concerns me about Seattle, I don't trust this defense. I mean, they just gave up 40 to the Raiders in Seattle. Can't be doing that. They gave up 21 to the Bucks, which I know feels low, but the Bucks offense is atrocious this year. I just haven't seen enough to really say that Seattle, I feel confident. And I think this is the time they crash back down to earth, which I think a lot of people have been waiting for. I mean, I think the blueprint's out there on how to beat Seattle. You run the football. If you can run the football, you are going to have a chance to beat the Seahawks. Now, I know they played the Rams twice.
Rush in overtime to end the game. I mean, just run the ball.
The Rams don't run the ball, so that's good news for the Seahawks. They played them twice.
And they are hurt.
The Panthers, that's all they do is run the football. So Seattle, they're gonna have to figure out a way to slow that down.
Though.
I don't know. Dante Foreman just ran wild on the Atlanta Falcons. So let's calm down a little bit there.
A goose egg before, so.
And what they do, they stopped throwing the football and they started running the football. So I'm just saying, let's dig into stats here, Jacob.
Yeah.
And then they play San Francisco. What do the Niners do? Run the football. the Chiefs, they do everything pretty well. So that's not a team. The Jets should run the football. I don't know why they're not, but the Seahawks have some tough matchups. I don't feel confident in them. I feel more confident in the Lions. So that's what we're going to roll with.
All right. We'll see.
We'll check and see who's able to get more of those teams predicted correctly. One debate that is being had right now is who's going to take home the MVP. And we are going to have our own debate right about now because we went completely different routes. Jacob, do you want to go ahead and start with who you were going to name MVP and also who you were debating with?
Yeah, I thought about this for far too long. I shouldn't have. There is one clear answer here, and it's Patrick Mahomes. He has been the biggest piece in one of the, if not the scariest offense in football. He is leading nearly every passer category. Compare him to the other top MVP candidates. He has 292 completions for 3,585 yards. That's 1,000 more passing yards than Tua or Hurts and 400 more than Josh Allen. He has 29 passing touchdowns compared to Tua's 19, Jalen's 17, and Allen's 23. He's keeping up with the competition on the ground, too. He's got 274 rushing yards and a touchdown. He's got 105.3 passer rating, trailing only Tua, Geno, and Jalen. Tua's the only one that even has remotely decent of a lead in that category. If you're looking at offensive numbers, I think Josh Allen is his closest competition, and that really starts to separate once you start looking at turnovers. Patrick has had 8 interceptions compared to Josh's 11 and 0 fumbles compared to Josh's 3. It's a tight race, and I think that this week we're going to see a lot of movement and answer a lot of questions. But with Patrick squaring off against the Bengals, Tua facing the Niners, I'm still thinking Patrick's going to gain ground this week and really put the rest of the competition to bed.
All right. Now I could have, the consensus right now, everyone's thinking it's Jalen Hurts. Seems to be what the people are.
That is
towards.
who I was really teetering with. And then I'm like, why am I even having this conversation? I'll be honest.
I, however, did not go Jalen Hurts. I didn't go Patrick Mahomes either. I went with Tua. And okay, I think that when you look at the numbers, look what Tua's done this season. He's kind of being overlooked by quite a bit. In games started and finished by Tua, the Dolphins are 8-0. They have not lost a game where Tua was out there for the beginning of the game to the end. Of course, that game in Cincinnati where he got hurt, they lost that one. So if you look at technically his QB record, that counts as a loss for him, even though unfairly so. He has 284 pass attempts as compared to Patrick Mahomes' 442. So yeah, Patrick Mahomes should have more passing yards. He should even have more passing touchdowns. Mahomes did play those 2 extra games as well, but I think that he'd still have more attempts and more touchdowns even so. Tua is second in the NFL in completion percentage, 69.7%, behind just Geno Smith, who's insane completion percentage right now. Tua is also 2,564 passing yards. This season, last season, Tua had 2,653 in the total season. So he's about to pass what he did last year, which I know it's not exactly what you look for an MVP, but it's still something that you're like, oh, wow, he's really taken a massive leap. 284.9 yards per game. That's 4th in the NFL. 19 touchdowns, not the most attractive number, I know, but take away those 2 games. Also had 2 games where he only threw 1 touchdown because his defense built him a big lead with defensive takeaways, and then they just ran the football pretty well those games. Only 3 interceptions, which I think that is something that has really, I did not see Tua cutting down on the turnovers like he has. He hasn't even lost a fumble yet this season. He's only fumbled twice. Dolphins recovered both of them. Very impressive, especially as a quarterback. You'd expect them to have a few more fumbles just because, I mean, you're going to get those blindside hits. So I'm impressed with that from Tua as well. And you mentioned his passer rating in QBR. His passer rating, 115.7, best in the league. 82.8 QBR, best in the league. He's doing this with a bottom 5 rushing offense. There is no rushing offense with the Dolphins. They've had a game or 2 where they've been all right, where they've gotten some touchdowns, where it's just okay, short little touchdown runs inside the 10. Teams know what Tua is going to try and do, or what the Dolphins are going to try and do. They're going to come out and they're going to throw the ball with Tua, try and beat you over the top with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Tua's throwing some touchdowns to some other guys. I mean, Sherfield, you ever hear of Sherfield before this season? No. Gesicki has always been a very good tight end. I'm not going to disrespect Gesicki, but he's having another solid season once again with Tua at the helm. River Craycraft, who I've heard of because he went to WSU, he's catching touchdowns this season for the Dolphins. So, I mean, it's just he has two very, very good weapons, but he's not just using those guys. He is relying on some of these unsung heroes, these guys that are just kind of laying in the weeds. I think you take Tua off the Dolphins are not even close to a playoff team. I mean, you saw what they did when he was out. They kind of crapped the bed a couple of times, did not play really good football. Now, I think if you take Jalen Hurts off the Eagles, I think the Eagles are still a playoff team. I think Gardner Minshew is more than capable of taking a team that loaded with talent. Patrick Mahomes, you get a little bit more of an argument. Are the Chiefs a playoff team? I can see it going either way. I don't think the Dolphins even sniff the postseason with Tua out. I think he is more valuable to that team than any other quarterback in the league. And let's be honest, this is a quarterback award. We didn't even talk about any other non-quarterbacks. This season, I'm not even sure if there's any that would really step up. Derrick Henry every single year, but he's kind of a little bit quieter. Austin Eckler has just been
Justin Jefferson honestly would be the closest one that I would put, and it's not close compared to these quarterbacks.
Justin Jefferson just doesn't have the touchdowns this season to really pop your eyes there. So it's a quarterback award. I just think Tua is the guy who deserves this award, who is, I think, going to win it. He's got an opportunity. I shouldn't say he's going to win it. He's got an opportunity in these next 6 games. If he can go out there and he can play well, he can keep pumping up those stats. It's going to be hard to not look at Tua and give him this award.
But if you see Tua and you see Patrick, and they both keep playing exactly as they have been playing, can you really give it to Tua over Patrick?
Yeah.
I cannot.
Absolutely, I can.
I can absolutely not. You can say, oh, he's missed a couple of games, so the stats aren't there. If a guy misses 10 games, he's not getting MVP, even if the first 6 games were the best the league has ever seen. You can say
the pass attempts are what are going to jack up Patrick Mahomes' number. He's in a pass-first offense, 100%. That's all they look and they say, hey, Patrick, go out there and you're going to throw the ball about 40 times a game.
Yeah.
Of course he's going to have more touchdowns and yards. Anyone should have more touchdowns and yards.
He is a more intricate part of that offense. You have the more opportunities around Tua where they are trying other things to get the passing game to work better. Of course, he's going to have less snaps and those passes are going to be more successful because they're throwing more into the mix. It's like saying, oh, let's look at Tyreek Hill, for example. People thought without Tyreek Hill, Chiefs were going to go down. Dolphins were going to be the best offense wide receiver wise that you could ask for. Wide receiver wise that you could ask for.
Okay, you had me a little worried there.
Yeah. And it just wasn't the case. You talk about Tua using other weapons besides Waddle and Hill. Well, Patrick doesn't even have those 2 great weapons, and he's still spreading the ball out to, let's be honest, Juju probably a B-, I would say, and the best weapon that he's got besides Kelsey. I mean, Kelsey is just a freak of nature. That's all there is to it. But you can't punish him for throwing the ball more. That's padding the stats. That is making that offense successful.
No, I'm not punishing him at all. I'm saying that is why those yards are going to be so much higher than everyone else's. The guys in the NFL who throw the football more. I mean, Jared Goff, for crying out loud, was near the top of the league leaders last season in yards and touchdowns. Because do you want to give him MVP? Because he was up there. He was up there in touchdowns and about every single stat.
If the stats made it and the wins were there, absolutely. But it didn't all come together like it's coming together for Patrick.
Also, you've got the turnovers. Patrick Mahomes, 8 interceptions this season. And now I know that's a little bit down from last season, which is a good thing for Patrick Mahomes. But I mean, you can't turn the ball over. I mean, look. I don't want to bring up.
10
I was
more
trying
touchdowns. I mean, interceptions are not good. Don't get me wrong, but if you have 10 more touchdowns and 5 more interceptions than the competition, your team's going to want those points all day long, because as long as you can stop the other team from scoring those times, you're a 2-to-1 ratio right there.
But let's look at the MVPs from last 2 years. And I didn't want to talk about Aaron Rodgers. That was my goal. Lots of touchdowns. Even his competitor was Rodgers and Brady, right? We can agree with that. It was Rodgers and Brady for sure. They threw those touchdowns. They threw more touchdowns than everyone else without turning the ball over. They threw more passes without turning the ball over. So turnovers are very important when it comes down to MVP voting.
I'm not saying that it's not important. I'm saying that, he has more interceptions than Tua does, but he is eclipsing those additional interceptions with a vast more number of touchdowns.
Also has a worse record than Tua.
Yeah, there's that. There is that.
Oh, there's
that.
So
that
those interceptions do hurt.
That is the one aspect that I think there is a competition there between, honestly, these 4 guys. But who's leading the power rankings every single time? The Chiefs. Not because they have a lesser record than the other guys, but because they are so potent of an offense that they're going to be in the running every single week. Dolphins, it's different. It is.
Power rankings mean diddly squat to me. So you bringing that up means that they had the Packers in the top 10 for the first 7-8 weeks of the season. It means nothing to me. It's just an opinion-based thing. So power rankings mean nothing. But I think we both agree that's kind of been narrowed down to 4 quarterbacks, whether it be Tua, Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, or Josh Allen. I think it's coming down to those 4. In these last 6 weeks, I think are going to be very, very vital. I mean, that's where MVPs are won and lost are towards the end of the season. So it'll be interesting to see which one's able to pull away. That is going to do it for our NFL talk, though. We aren't quite done because we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We got the Boston Red Sox Mount Rushmore. Yes, the Mount Rushmore series is back. We will talk about that and have another heated debate coming up next year on the Kingsmen Sports Podcast.
Alderson's Awards West Printwares is your one stop to tell the world about your school, club, or business. Spread the word on jackets, shirts, hats, and more from Awards West Printwares in Centralia. Awards West Printwares offers fast service of quality products including screen printing and embroidery done on site. They offer a wide variety of advertising specialties at great prices and delivered right to your door. For a full catalog, go online to aldersons.net. For maximum impact, Alderson's Awards West Printwares is ready to serve you today.
Welcome back to the Kingsmen Sports Podcast, where it is time for another edition of our Mount Rushmore series. This week, it is the Boston Red Sox, which turned out to be pretty tough. The Red Sox have had some pretty good players. I don't know if you've heard of many of them. You have. But they have had a lot of success despite having, a pretty long World Series drought. But it was still very, very tough. Jacob and I have 3 of the same and then 1 disagreement. We're going to save that one for last because there's going to be a lot of debate going on right there. So let's start with the no-brainer. And this one, he's one of the greatest baseball players of all time. It's Ted Williams. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's a better hitter of the baseball, except for maybe Pete Rose in the history of baseball than Ted Williams. And Ted Williams, he did it with a lot more power. So there's the debate there. With the Boston Red Sox, he hit 344, 482, 634 with his slash line, 521 home runs in his
You just
career with the
don't
Red
see that
Sox.
from power guys or
No,
from contact guys.
exactly. The average normally, if it's high, the home runs are going to be low and it'll swap on its way down. Not with Ted Williams. 1,839 RBIs, 2,021 walks, 2,654 hits, a 1.116 OPS, all-time MLB leader in on-base percentage with that 482 on-base percentage. He was close to getting on base as many times as he was put out, which is just unfathomable when it comes to baseball. He's the franchise leader in batting average, on-base percentage, obviously, slugging, home runs. This was with him losing nearly 5 years of his prime due to serving in the U.S. military in World War II and the Korean War. He's a career Red Sox. Dude was just special. He could have seen those numbers go up way more, but hey, duty was calling and he answered the call. So Ted Williams, not only a historic baseball player, but a pretty historic American too.
Well, I mean, duty was calling, and you would get court-martialed if you didn't answer the call back then. So, yeah. he wasn't happy about it, but he still I'll talk about that here in a minute.
He could have fought a lot more.
True. Yeah, absolutely. One of the greatest players to ever do it. You said it. Along with those just mind-blowing stats, he secured 2 MVPs, 2 Triple Crowns, 6 batting titles, participated in 19 All-Star games, and like you said, that was with some of his prime years being taken by the war. I said war like .war instead of the actual word war. So his career on base percentage beat Babe Ruth. I mean, if you beat Babe Ruth in career stats, you're doing pretty darn good. Single season average of 406. That'll never be touched. He literally wrote the book on hitting. I mean, have you read The Science of Hitting? It's a pretty good read. I don't know. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like MLB players read that book to figure out how to hit better. If you are
1000%.
coaching the masses to make baseball better, you're doing something right. He was also one of the main reasons that the Red Sox became the number 1 team in Boston. They boxed out the Braves and sent them off to Milwaukee due to low fan engagement and attendance, and that was because Ted Williams was such a popular attraction in the city. He had a very up and down relationship with the Red Sox fans, though. He didn't really give in to their admiration very often because he hated he would call it hypocrisy, the back and forth cheering and booing. And he's like, no, if you guys are booing me, then when you cheer me, I'm not tipping my cap when I run the bases, and I'm not coming out when you ask for encores. But that didn't stop him from loving him. He was just one of those guys that, media aside, people loved him. And ask any Red Sox fan or baseball fan, and they'll tell you he's a clear number 1 for Boston. And I know it doesn't count, but props to him. I mean, he wasn't happy about the draft. He hated it. He got called back into service from the reserves multiple times. A lot of those guys just played baseball for the military. Not him. He was like, no, sign me up as a Marine fighter pilot. And apparently he was one of the best at that too. He was setting records for reflexes and coordination and reaction time. So makes sense he'd be a pretty phenomenal hitter, right? And then he gets pulled in the Korean War as well, like you mentioned, and he lost even more potential playing time when he was still a consistent all-star, and he flew full-blown combat missions as a captain. How many people, let alone baseball players, can say that they've attacked Pyongyang? I mean, that's a one-of-a-kind call to fame there. Then he stayed with the team after his retirement. He groomed the future of the ball club, including Hall of Famer Carl Yaz, which we'll probably talk about, I'm guessing. So
maybe.
just overall a phenomenal guy. Kind of a weird dude, I hear, the cryogen and everything. But baseball and American wise, you just can't beat it.
Yeah, if he was out there munching on hot dogs and apple pies, also, I mean, that's the only way he could be
Yep.
any more American than what he was. Now, a big reason Ted Williams was at the top was because we put so much emphasis on the on-field play. We do take a lot into the love of the fans. If this was just a fanfare, Mount Rushmore, our next guy would be at the top without question. It's David Ortiz.
Yep.
Big Papi was just so loved, not only really by Red Sox fans, but if you weren't a Yankees fan, you admired David Ortiz, and I think some Yankees fans now
Yankees fans
will tell you, hey, yeah, we didn't hate him all the time.
Yeah,
but I mean, this guy was special. He was a 293, 570 slash line with 483 home runs as a Red Sox. He did get to 500 because of his time with Minnesota. 1,530 RBIs with the Red Sox, 1,133 walks, which is a ton of walks, 2,079 hits, a 956 OPS. Again, he's the most beloved player in the history of the Boston Red Sox. It's because of what he did in the postseason. I've got his postseason stats. 289, 404, 543 slash line in the playoffs with 17 home runs, 16 RBIs, 51 runs scored, 88 hits. That was an 85 postseason games, 369 plate appearances in the postseason games. And I've got just some of the moments that made David Ortiz so loved. It started in 2003 with his double against Oakland to keep the Boston Red Sox alive. They end up coming back to beat the A's and win that series. 2004 was just an unbelievable year for him. That walk-off home run against the Angels to sweep the Angels in the ALDS. And then he went on to the ALCS, which is so known by anyone who's even remotely a fan of baseball. They were down 3-0 to the New York Yankees. He had a walk-off to beat the Yankees in Game 4, then a walk-off single the next day to all of a sudden make that series 3-2. The Red Sox go on to win that series. They end up going on to win the World Series to end that drought, end the curse. And also, I mean, in 2013, he had a game-tying grand slam against the Tigers when they were down 1-0, completely flipped that series. They go on to beat the Tigers and win the World Series that year as well. And then that speech that he gave after the Boston Marathon bombings, which just gave I watched that live. It gives you goosebumps every time you hear it. It showed you how much Boston meant to David Ortiz and how much David Ortiz meant to Boston, that he was the guy to kind of speak about Boston. He was the Bostonian to speak and rally the city. I mean, man, David Ortiz is Boston to me.
Yeah. I was actually really excited that you not only included Ortiz, but also had him as high up as you did, because I know some people are going to roll their eyes at us for that one. But it's not even close. Big Papi has meant more to the Red Sox organization than any other player in history, even beating out some beloved greatest of all time baseball players. One of the most popular players in the history of the game. The guy was absolutely adored, like you said, not just by Boston, but sports lovers all over the world. You remember that commercial? I don't remember if it was New Era or MLB or something, but it had a guy over in Japan with David Ortiz outfit on, and everybody was like, Big Papi? Big Papi? No, it's just a random guy. The hat comes off and they're like, you're not Big Papi. But just all around the world, people were like, this guy is the greatest. That there's no other way to put it. And then, yeah, I was also going to mention this is our effing city speech. How many coaches, managers, owners, city officials back a guy who just dropped an F-bomb on live TV and in front of tens of thousands people while repping their team? It was exactly what the city needed at that time, and it cemented him as a city hero, an icon that just went above sports. But his sports journey was just as incredible. the 14 years with the club, he was a 10-time All-Star, 7-time top MVP candidate, 7-time Silver Slugger, Home Run Derby champion, World Series MVP. He brought home 3 championships to Boston, will forever be known as one of the greatest postseason hitters of all time. You mentioned the stats. It is just insane. 13 career walk-off home runs, 2 of which were in the postseason. And I won 8 Edgar Martinez awards. And I have no doubt that if David Ortiz was born 10 years earlier, the award would be named after him instead. So I, as a Mariner fan, I'm just glad that Edgar was able to get there first. But
it's going to be named after a Mariner regardless.
True. If he was 10 years earlier, wouldn't have done that trade. But just an insane player, an insane career, and an insane connection to a city.
Baseball fans, the connection with baseball fans, also a Hall of Famer now. So glad to see David Ortiz get what everyone knew was coming.
Yeah.
Let's go to number 3, who we've already mentioned once. You mentioned him when you're talking about Ted Williams, Carl Yastrzemski. I mean, Yaz was just another guy who just went out there and hit. The numbers aren't quite as daunting as Ted Williams, which just shows you how good Ted Williams was. But right. Yastrzemski at 285, 379, 462 slash line, 452 career home runs with the Boston Red Sox, 1,844 RBIs, 1,845 walks, had more walks than RBIs by 1, which is baffling.
By 1.
3,419 hits, an 841 OPS. He leads the franchise in virtually everything. Games, at-bats, hits, doubles, triples, singles, RBIs, third in home runs behind just the 2 guys ahead of him, Ted Williams and David Ortiz on our Rushmores. Won the Triple Crown in 67, which is not an easy feat. I know you just kind of slid in Ted Williams won it twice. That is mind-boggling that even happened. A 23-year career for Carl Yastrzemski, every single one with the Boston Red Sox. 369 average for him in the playoffs. The playoffs were different back then. The first time he made the playoffs, you went straight to the World Series. The second time you went straight to the ALCS and then the World Series. So it was a different format. And he wasn't there in the golden age of Boston Red Sox baseball. They were still pretty solid, around 500 every year, had those years where they went up and above 500. But it was a tough time to be a Boston Red Sox fan. But Carl Yastrzemski, he was the bright spot. He was the light at the end of the tunnel. He was the guy you could be like, okay, this is what we're going to see. We're going to see Yaz go out there and put on absolute show, because that's what he did every single night. Carl Yastrzemski is a special player.
Yeah, absolutely. He is the perfect trifecta of elite talent, career longevity, and team loyalty that would make it impossible to leave a player off of a Rushmore list. And this guy really did take it to the next level. Along with the stats, he went to 18 All-Star games, won another All-Star game MVP, 7 Gold Gloves, 3 batting titles. And you mentioned the Triple Crown. That was in 67. Nobody else won a Triple Crown for 45 years until Miggy finally did in 2012. He holds, I guess you already said that he held the franchise records of all of those things. So just the fact that Ted Williams' shoes were there to fill and he did it was incredible. I mean, if you lose an all-time great of the sport and the next guy to come into the position is just as successful, I think of Favre going to Rodgers. You don't get that Hall of Fame back-to-back in a position that you need like the Red Sox did. I mean, just talk about blessed.
Yeah, it's very lucky. That's what you can say about them. It was a special transition there. And that's a lot of pressure on a guy like Yastrzemski to take over for a guy like Williams. It's not easy for anyone to do.
Yeah.
Now we go to number 4. where we both picked pitchers. No, I did not pick Mo Vaughn. So unfortunately, Mo Vaughn did not make this list. But we went different routes here. So there's going to be a little bit of a debate after we both mention the reasons why we did pick our guys. I went with Pedro Martinez.
Okay.
Pedro Martinez was just, I mean, the scariest pitcher in all of baseball, unquestionably, for a good 6 years with the Boston Red Sox. He was terrifying. Nobody wanted to face him. No one felt comfortable facing him because he was a little mean too. He was going to go out there and he says, yeah, if I hit a guy, 9 times out of 10, it was on purpose. Something that he's actually said was he was going out there hitting guys on purpose. With the Boston Red Sox, though, he won 117 games. I'm not going to mention the losses. I don't put that much emphasis on a pitcher's win-loss record, but a 2.52 ERA in his career with Boston, an 0.978 whip in his time with the Red Sox, 1,683 strikeouts, 22 complete games, which complete games are still look different, especially in the early 2000s. It was a transition time there. Third in strikeouts in Boston Red Sox history. That's baffling since he wasn't there that long. And I mean, he had one of the most dominant stretches of pitching in history from 97 to 03. The history of the game, not just the history of the Boston Red Sox, the history of baseball. He won 108 or 117 games over that span, led all of baseball in ERA 4 different seasons. He was the guy who led not just the American League, all of baseball in ERA. He won the pitching Triple Crown in 1999, where he had a 2.07 ERA, 23 wins, and 313 strikeouts over that season. And his next season is widely viewed as maybe even better, maybe the greatest season a pitcher's ever had in 2000, where he won 18 games, had a 1.74 ERA. An ERA under 2 is baffling. An 0.737 whip. I can't even fathom how he wasn't walking guys with how hard he threw. 284 strikeouts to just 32 walks in that season, gave up 128 hits, won 2 Cy Youngs with the Boston Red Sox, also finished in second twice, should have beat Barry Zito for a 3rd Cy Young, but I won't talk about that. 1 3rd place finish and 1 4th place finish. Also finished second in MVP in 1999 and 5th in 2000, was part of that team that finally ended that curse with the Boston Red Sox by winning that World Series in 04. He's in the Hall of Fame, donning a Boston Red Sox cap. He pitched in the peak of the steroid era. And besides random people saying, oh, I think Pedro Martinez did steroids, never had his name really fogged up with any of that. He did do one thing that is tough to forgive. He spelled my name wrong on an autograph I have from him, but I'll overlook that for Pedro Martinez. He's got to be on the Mount Rushmore for the Red Sox for me.
See, and I went back and forth a lot. Pedro, I love him as a player. And if he had just a few more years with Boston, I feel like it would have been enough. He had a great peak, but it just wasn't enough service time on the team. I went with someone a few more years on the team, Roger Clemens. And I know the controversy surrounding Clemens has always been huge, but that doesn't change the fact he was still one of the greatest Red Sox of all time. 192 to 111 win-loss. 3.06 ERA, a 1.15 whip, almost 2,600 strikeouts, 2,590 strikeouts with the team alone, 100 complete games, and over 80 wins above replacement for the Red Sox. He won his first 3 of 7 Cy Young awards with Boston, had an MVP season in 86, represented the team with 5 All-Star games. He won an All-Star game MVP after throwing 3 perfect innings and striking out 2 against All-Stars. He won the ERA title 4 times, and he had 2 separate 20 strikeout games with Boston. If the Red Sox had managed to re-sign him, they absolutely would have broken the curse a few years prior. Those years with Toronto, if he was a Red Sox instead, it just would have been an absolute game changer. If it weren't for all of the unfortunate black marks on his career, the fights and the suspensions and the steroid allegations and the off the field issues, he would no doubt be in the Hall of Fame. With everything he did while he was playing for the Red Sox, couldn't not include him.
And now I'll counter with the point why I didn't include Roger Clemens on mine. You kind of mentioned, Pedro, it was the service time for you.
Yep.
Not only the steroids thing, of course, I always push those guys away. I try and do my best to avoid any steroids users really on my list. It's the fact that the Boston Red Sox fans don't like Roger Clemens. They don't. And that's a big part of this Mount Rushmore for me. I need these guys to be guys that the fans look at and be like, yeah, he's someone I'm proud to have representing the Boston Red Sox. It's not that way with Roger Clemens. Not only did he leave the team on very poor terms. He went and pitched for not only the Blue Jays, but then he pitched for the Yankees as well. Which, don't get me wrong, I know it feels like something that's small and shouldn't matter, but it matters to Red Sox fans.
Oh, yeah.
Very much so. I mean, they're more forgiving, I guess, of Johnny Damon, I guess.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
I think it's only because Johnny Damon was a little bit more loved when he was with the Red Sox than Roger Clemens. But it's
that
just
one hurt, though, because it was direct, too. It was.
Yeah. Roger Clemens just there's no fan love there. There's really not. The fans, the franchise, the front office, nobody in Boston wants to even remember Roger Clemens. I know he did great things, but I found an article about Boston fans thinking Roger Clemens might be the Antichrist. So, I mean, it's just there's no love there.
You do have to. I mean, Hank Aaron, one of the most beloved guys in baseball, good guy. And Roger Clemens is saying, oh, you don't think that I deserve an MVP? Why don't you come out of retirement? I'll crack your skull open and see if I'm valuable to you then. We're not judging him by how much of a likable guy he is throughout his career. But counter to your counter, when he was a Red Sox, fans loved him. And fans were they were ticked at Dan Duquette for not re-signing him and letting him walk. And if that hadn't happened, that bad blood would never be there.
But it is there.
It is there. Look at
what if.
It is there
and
when he is no longer a Red Sox, which we're not taking into account here.
We're taking into account what Red Sox fans think about him all throughout, not just his time as a Red Sox. It's got to be what they think of him, because there's players that are become more loved after their career or towards the tail end of their career than they are at the beginning of it. So, I mean, there's been some guys that we've left off due to fans. I mean, we can go back to the New York Mets. We had some controversy there with Doc Gooden. It's
that
what
was during their tenure with the team that affected it so much.
Where fans kind of were able to be like, okay, we don't love that, but we still love him because he does great for our team. It was after the fact that then you saw Mets fans being like, all right, this guy's just a piece of work. Get him away from Mets history. I just think
I know we went through that with the Blue Jays too. It was just, it didn't quite outweigh his contributions while on the team to me. It really didn't.
I can tell you, if we went to the streets of Boston and we talked about this, held up signs, you'd get a lot of chatter coming your way.
And if we went back in time to when he was a Red Sox,
they wouldn't know who Pedro Martinez is.
Okay, but
so that's
if we went to 2 points in history, one in Roger Clemens, Red Sox prime, and one to Pedro Martinez, Red Sox prime.
Pedro Martinez, I think, would be more loved.
I don't know.
We'll see.
Most of that
Hopefully
was
we can get
afterward.
some.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can. I mean, it's impossible for you to prove your point. I guess we'll let the Red Sox fans vote on who they agree with more. So we'll see who wins this. I will say I did have Roger Clemens as an honorable mention because he was incredible with them, despite, getting a little bit of help from unnatural substances. But we also had I had Cy Young on mine. Wasn't the team that Cy Young was known for playing for, but he was still incredible with Boston way back when pitching was different. I have Jim Rice on mine as well, another kind of transition piece from a tough time with the Red Sox to kind of their golden age. And then a personal one, a fourth, Tim Wakefield. I mean, the guy was so awesome. Mr. Knuckleball. I mean, that's just a shout out to Tim Wakefield.
My 3 honorable mentions, I had Wade Boggs actually as my batter that really stood out. I mean, 6-time Silver Slug, 8-time All-Star, Hall of Famer, Red Sox cap. I mean, he's up there for sure. I did have Pedro, as I mentioned before, and then Cy Young. Same thing as Pedro, really. If he had more service time with the team, I mean, they named the award for best pitcher after him, for heaven's sake. I mean, he's a big deal. And he had some really great years with the team, but not quite enough. And when you said you had a personal one, I thought for sure one of your childhood favorites, Nomar Garciaparra. And when I was looking through, I mean, he obviously didn't make the list of greatest of all time. There's just way too many names above him on such a talented team. Yeah. But I did come across some of his stats, and he had some very, very good years in Boston.
This list wasn't easy by any means, but we will see. Nope. It really came down to that Pedro Clemens, which you're just wrong about, but I digress.
I don't know. Pedro, I mean, it's not enough time. They were very, very good years, but look at all of those stats. I mean, it is night and day difference.
I don't know if it's night and day. I do know that Roger Clemens is hated and Pedro won a World Series and is repping that team in the Hall of Fame. But again, we're not going to agree on that one. So we'll just move on. That's going to do it for our Boston Red Sox Mount Rushmore. Next week, we're going to change our socks. We're going to wear white socks next week, and we'll talk about the Chicago White Sox top 4 of all time. There's already one name that just pops into your head immediately, maybe even 2. It's going to be a fun one, so I can't wait to get into that. That is going to actually do it, though, for this week's episode of the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. And again, we will be back here in a week time. We are looking at potentially doing a college football show either next week or the week after. And one of them will also try and get some NBA talk on. Also going to be doing some more MLB Mount Rushmore. Just talked about the Chicago White Sox. And in December, we're also going to have, we got World Cup stuff also going on. But we have winter meetings coming up for baseball. And, of course, we've got football season. We're right in the thick of things. So there is a lot of stuff to still talk about. We will have your weekly dose of the Kingsmen Sports Podcast coming up next week. We'll see you then.